Today, I want to share a bunch of things you can do as a creator, a coach, or anyone who sells their skills online to save time and run things with less effort while increasing the impact you can have and how much money you can make. In other words, how to create more leverage in your business, which is what we need if we want a business that serves our life instead of taking from it. So I'm going to go through three main areas: your offer, which is how you present what you do to the market; acquisition, which is how you attract and convert clients; and delivery, which is how you serve those clients. And the plan is to cover the specific strategies that you can use in each of these areas to create more leverage. Over the last couple of years, I've spoken to a bunch of people in this space who are really short on time. They work really hard, often to the point of burnout, but they still struggle to get the results they want. So if you're in a position like the one I just described, or you simply want more time and freedom in your life, then I really hope this video helps. And with that said, let's get into it. So your offer is the first and arguably the most important place where you can add leverage. But first, I think it's worth mentioning the distinction between an offer and a product, because it's kind of fundamental. And I know this is something that I didn't understand when I first sort of started diving into this topic. So a product is the actual thing you sell. It's what people get if they buy. Whereas an offer is how you package and present those products to the market. So another way to look at this is that the product is the gift and the offer is the gift wrapping. And the reason this is key is that if you don't have an offer, or if your offer doesn't have any of the key ingredients that it needs to perform well, which we're going to go through in a second, you're always going to have to push harder to get the results, to make the sale. Potential clients might not see the value in it. They might not feel like it's relevant for them. They might not feel like the outcome is achievable, and so on and so forth. So this is where I recommend starting if you're looking to add more leverage into your business. And specifically, I recommend having one core offer, which I call the freedom offer, which just means that you're delivering one primary outcome or transformation for your clients. Having one offer doesn't mean it's the only offer we can make. And I'll go into this in more detail in the next section when we talk about acquisition. But the basic point to keep in mind here, the basic point I'm trying to get across, is that we have one core offer because it keeps everything nice and simple. And obviously, whenever something is simple, it's going to be far more efficient. So we define this one core offer, and from there, we make sure it has everything it needs to sell, which means it contains something I call the 6 Ps. 6 Ps are promise, path, price, protection, perks, and push. Having all of these in place gives you the best chance at converting, and conversely, missing any of these can hamstring the potential success of your offer. So this basically paves the way for everything that comes next in terms of leverage. Having a weak offer is better than having no offer at all, but it's a bit like having a small lever. Like, you still have to push pretty hard to get the results. Whereas having all of these 6 Ps, having a strong offer, is like having a really big lever, which means you can put a little bit in and get a lot out the other side. It just makes the whole process of trying to acquire customers and clients more reliable and easier, and ultimately more efficient. As another really quick aside here, if you're already putting offers out, check out the link in the description. It takes you to something called the 10-minute offer unlock, which is a really simple tool I put together that gives you a visual depiction of the strength of your offer and reveals any hidden gaps or untapped opportunities which could improve the success of your offer. It takes 10 minutes or less. It's totally free, so I recommend checking that out if you have an offer or you're putting one together. I want to make sure that it's set up to do well. Okay, so let's assume we have an offer. It has the 6 Ps. The next thing we can do to add more leverage here is to package it in something like a Google Doc, some sort of text document. And we do that because it means that you no longer have to rely on sales calls. I'm definitely not against sales calls. They obviously work. But in general, if you sell via a Google Doc, you end up with a much more efficient way of converting clients. Because suddenly, instead of having to spend an hour on a call with one person and making an offer to them, which they may or may not accept, suddenly you can be selling via chat and sending your offer to multiple people at the same time and potentially landing multiple clients in the same hour-long period. And also, if you sell via a Google Doc or anything similar, it means you can automate the process of making an offer. Someone could click on a button in your email, for example, or they download a lead magnet and they get redirected automatically to your Google Doc where they get to see your offer. And so again, it just means that you don't have to hop on a sales call to present your offer to someone. So just to sum this up on the offer side, we have one core offer, which keeps things nice and simple, which is a bedrock of efficiency. We then make sure it has everything it needs to sell, so you can sell it with less effort. And then we package it into something like a Google Doc, which means you can sell without sales calls and automate the process of making offers. Once you have all of that in place, the next step is to find and attract people to send the offer to. And there are some really powerful things you can do to add leverage here as well. Okay, so in terms of acquiring customers and clients, there are two main areas where we can create more leverage for ourselves. The first is in our marketing, or more specifically, the content creation process, and the second is in the sales process itself. Most creators, coaches, people selling their skills or information online, they don't use any type of content framework. And this is important because, like I've said before, if you've watched any of my other videos, the main currency of content creation is energy. And so if you don't have any sort of framework to guide that energy, to guide your efforts, the result is that it tends to get scattered all over the place. You don't necessarily know what you're going to post about ever, or you post on lots of different topics, so your messaging becomes really scattered and disconnected and hard for people to really sort of get a sense of what you can do for them, and so on and so forth. So essentially, without any sort of framework, you can end up creating and posting content at random, and it dilutes the potential impact it can have on your business. The overall outcome of that is that not a lot happens. You pour lots of time and effort into content creation, but you don't get much back in return. Like, progress feels excruciatingly slow. You can end up feeling invisible, and ultimately you just get frustrated with the whole process, and it can just feel like a pointless endeavor. I know that because I have been in that situation a lot in the past. And so I've talked about this before, but a framework acts a bit like the guardrails at a bowling alley. And so although, the ball can bounce around a bit and veer from side to side, those guardrails mean it'll never go down into the gutter, and you're always going to end up hitting something at the very end. It's sort of funneling your efforts towards the results you want. And so likewise, that framework means that your energy, the energy that you're putting into content creation, is always focused on things that matter, always leading you towards the results that you need and want. So if you don't have the budget for ads, or if you've never created them before and you don't necessarily know what you're doing there, which means you're relying on organic content to build your audience, then I'm a strong advocate for having a content framework. And the one I came up with is called Straight Line Content. I'm not going to go into too much detail on straight line content because I just made a whole video on it, which I'll link to somewhere on the screen. But the basic idea, the kind of tagline, is that it draws the straightest possible line to results. The framework provides content ideas for you if you don't know what to post about. And everything that you put together falls into three main categories. There's philosophy, issues, and evidence, which is what I call sharing your pie. Everything that you create has a clear link to your offers and big ideas, and ultimately to what you do for clients. Finally, we take that primary post and shred and distribute it nice and efficiently across social media. So you get a process for creating content that's nice and efficient, and that content is designed to get you meaningful results, leads, and sales more efficiently as well. If we're doing things right on that side, we should have leads coming in. And so now we're going to look at the sales process and how to add more leverage when it comes to turning those leads into customers and clients. One of the most useful things I've learned over the last 2 years is also one of the most paradoxical, and it's that the quickest route to landing a client isn't always the shortest. Most creators and coaches and people in this space, they get their lead and then they try and turn them straight away into a client, and they often try and sell them straight into the kind of most expensive client program they have. When you do things that way with enough time and enough leads, a small percentage will bite, normally about 2 to 3%. So imagine if you were a farmer and you spent the whole season growing your crops, and then when it came to harvest it, you ended up throwing away 98% of it. It's obviously not an efficient or sustainable way of running things. So what can you do instead? Someone I learned a lot of this stuff from said that Basically, you just have to accept the situation for what it is, that the vast majority of people in your audience will never become a client. And so from there, the real goal becomes identifying who in your audience will be the most likely to become one. If you're going to create more efficiency in the sales process, you need a way to identify, to discern who in your audience is most likely to become a client. And we do that by selling something cheaper first. In other words, we try and turn people into a customer before we turn them into a client. Any purchase signals trust, but it also demonstrates intent and it demonstrates desire. When you create a customer, when someone buys something from you, it also gets them in motion. And this speaks to something that I call lead momentum. So a couple of years ago, after my last business died, when I was trying to figure out what to do next, what this kind of next iteration of the business would look like, I bought a course on content creation. And once I added it to the cart, the people selling it included an order bump, which I ended up picking up as well. And then once I'd bought that, the sellers offered like a one-time discount on their biggest course, which I'd been looking at anyway. And so I ended up picking up that too, the most expensive one of the lot. Once you're in motion, it's kind of like Newton's law of motion. Once something is in motion, it's more likely to stay in motion. And so when you sell someone a one-time thing, when someone buys something from you once, you get them in motion, which means you have a much better chance of turning them into a client in the future, especially if what you have sold them is highly congruent with your kind of core offer, with your client program. And that feeds into a really important point, because you can create customers simply by serving your current clients. This is where the leverage really lies on the acquisition side. You take work that you're already going to do for your clients, then you invite the rest of your audience to take part. And then from there, in whatever form, whatever format that takes, could be a workshop, for example, you can invite the people who joined you from your audience, who bought that kind of one-time ticket, you can invite those people to become clients. So what this means is that you're generating cash flow from work that you're already going to do, which means you're essentially getting paid to acquire clients. But in the process, you're also creating assets. And so remember earlier when I said that high agency creators, we have one core offer, but this isn't the only offer that we can present to the market. This is essentially what I was talking about. But you can package and sell those assets as new offers to your audience. And because you created those assets by serving clients, all of them end up being highly congruent with that one core program, with the transformation that you deliver for clients. You also end up monetizing a much higher percentage of your audience. So again, the vast majority of people will never become a client. We have to accept that, but that doesn't mean that there's no other demand in it. It doesn't mean that the people in your audience won't give you any money. And so by taking these assets and packaging them into new offers, you can tap into that demand and monetize new segments of your audience, which may otherwise have remained untapped. So this generates cash flow, increases your chance of landing clients, and together you end up with a much more efficient audience, which means you don't need such a big one to hit your financial goals. So at this point, we've covered how to get more leverage in our offers. We've covered how to get more leverage in our kind of marketing process and how we then take our leads and turn them into customers and clients. So now let's turn to how to do the same when it comes to delivery, when it comes to serving those clients, using something that I call an offer ladder. This is where most of the leverage that high agency creators have comes from. An offer ladder is one core offer sold with different dynamic levels of support. So we take our freedom offer, then we sell different levels or rungs of support. So again, everyone is working towards the same thing, but at those lower rungs, clients get less direct support from you, which means they pay less. Whereas at higher rungs, clients who want faster results can pay more to get more direct support from you. So together, this does two things. It maximizes acquisition because those cheaper rungs make it easier for people to join. It keeps the now number nice and low, but it maximizes revenue as well because you're tapping into the corners of your market who are willing to pay more for faster results. So you're able to serve more clients, to have a bigger impact, and to make more money, all while keeping your delivery burden nice and low. And it does that because most of the clients, because they're cheaper, are going to stay at those lower rungs where your input can be really minimal. And at those higher rungs where you're offering more direct support, you're going to have fewer people to work with because they're more expensive. You also get to control how many people you're working with at any given time. So you end up with a system where your workload doesn't necessarily increase with the amount of clients that are entering your world. And there are other benefits to offer ladders too. For example, you end up reducing churn, which is a key part of increasing LTV. That's partly because clients at those higher rungs can downgrade to a cheaper one instead of just leaving altogether. But it's also because you're under less pressure to get new clients. So this is a tension that's really common in this space where you're torn between spending your limited time and resources acquiring new clients versus serving the clients you already have. And if you're spending too much time trying to get new ones, you're taking away from the time you have to serve your current clients, which means the quality of your service goes down. And so they're more likely to leave. So your churn goes up, which puts you under more pressure to land new clients. And so you end up creating this vicious spiral. Whereas with an offer ladder, suddenly your revenue no longer hinges on landing new clients. Like, because you have those higher rungs, you can focus on upselling your current clients into those higher levels. So this is something I call client momentum. So earlier, we covered lead momentum, where we go from turning people from a lead into a customer into a client, getting them in motion with a one-time sale, which then facilitates conversions on the client side. Here, we've already converted our clients, and because they're already in motion there, because they in theory are the people who trust us the most, who we have the most rapport with already, who hopefully we've got results for already. And so we can focus on inviting them to join our higher levels, our higher rungs instead. And because of that, we can hit our financial goals without having to rely on landing new clients. And because of that, you have more time for your current ones, which means the quality of your service stays nice and high, which means people are less likely to leave, and so on and so forth. You end up with a nice upward spiral where clients end up staying for longer and you're under less pressure to attract new ones. Anyway, I hope all that makes sense. I hope that explains why having an offer ladder gives you lots of leverage on the delivery side. If you want any more information on it, I have a whole video on offer ladders, which I'll link to somewhere on the screen. But otherwise, I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this one. If you're a creator or a coach or anyone selling their skills online or looking to get into it and you want any help with any of this, feel free to reach out at any point and I'll try my best to help. In the meantime, once again, check out the link in the description. It takes you to the 10-minute offer unlock, which I talked about earlier. And finally, if you'd like to find out about the framework I'm using to rebuild my business to 10K a month by the end of this year, working 2 to 3 days a week, check out this video next where I talk about something called ice cold content. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.